Folks, welcome to Leslie's Lounge. My guest tonight is one of my buddies, one of the most naturally gifted hockey players that I've ever seen, and a hell of a guy who's made a living playing over here, this side of the pond, made a shitload of money over in the European leagues. Bobby Mano. Robert, how are you, my friend?
Good, Leslie. How you doing?
How you doing?
Good.
Born in 1956, Halloween, I believe, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was
a real trick or a treat. I don't know what it was.
Bobby, tell me a little something about you growing up. You're a great baseball player here in Niagara Falls. You're a Niagara Falls boy.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're a tremendous athlete as a hockey player. You still are in great shape. You still play the game. But tell me about your experiences growing up playing hockey here in the Niagara region and the players that you played against on the way up.
Well, you know, growing up here back in the '60s, it was a big era in the summertime. Everybody played hardball,
right?
And there was a big Yankee-dominated area for baseball at the time. So we all grew up, you know, pretty much the same. We all played hardball and played hockey in the wintertime. And as you know, as things progressed, as I got a little bit older, I was probably a little bit better baseball player than I was a hockey player.
Yeah, I understand that you're a hell of a baseball player.
So, but at that era, you know, we never thought much about being pro baseball players. We just played it as another sport. But I think, you know, like all kids in Canada, especially in that era, when you were playing hockey, our dream was to be in the NHL, of course. When, you know, we grew up with only 6 teams.
Right.
So that made it, you know, you kind of focused on hockey. But I think when you come from a small town, I mean, you're a kid, it's a dream, but you don't really, I don't know if you really believe if it can come true.
Did anybody else make it in the city that played your era?
The guys that played in my era the other guy was Jim Bedard.
Jimmy Bedard to go.
And Jimmy's with Detroit now, of course. And yeah, Jimmy had a shot at it. We went through the same eras of playing together through our minor hockey, and we played Tier 2 and junior hockey. We were born the same year, of course. And then Jimmy was drafted by Washington.
And you were drafted by
Vancouver Canucks. Yeah.
And then 26th overall, Bobby, right?
Yeah, I think it was something like that.
And you're also drafted in the WHA, 19th overall by the Quebec Nordiques.
Yeah, I was drafted by both teams. Actually, both teams didn't have a first-round pick that year, so.
Right. Tell me about your junior career, because it must have been a little bit tough for you being a Niagara region guy, playing in St. Catharines and Hamilton. I just knowing you probably would enjoy getting away a little bit. Down to Sudbury to the Sioux, or? Well,
you know, it was funny because I hadn't left home really farther than Hamilton, so right. I really didn't know, I didn't too much about it. When I went to Hamilton, we were still the Red Wings back then, and we didn't have too good of a season. We were drafted, Dale McCourt was drafted by Hamilton. Dave Draper was the coach. We went through 3 coaches that year. We went through Dave Draper, and we went through a guy by the name of Harold Schooley, was a Hamilton guy who was in around sports all the time. And the third guy coach was Dave Creighton, Adam's father, which was, he's an ex-Leaf too.
Yeah, exactly. Big tall guy.
Big tall guy. So he come and finish the season. And then the next season I ended up finding my way back home to St. Catharines. And believe it or not, that was a good time for me because I was home and I still had a lot of support from my friends and my family around. And I actually had a pretty good 2 years that I played juniors.
Now, you can't find anybody in this region, in the Niagara region, that say anything bad about Bob Mano. And I want to say something about your father. He's a great guy. How big was his influence in your career, Bobby?
Well, he was big because he was always supporting me. Like, you know, he had a business and I worked for him. But whenever there was a game, he'd always let me. Yeah. He'd always let me go, and then he'd find a way to free himself up for an hour or two from his business and come and watch me play, whether it was baseball or hockey. So in that way, you know, I don't think you realize that. When you're young growing up that you have that support, you can do that, but as you get older and you stop and you realize how important your parents were, then you really see how much time you put into
exactly
making sure that I was always in the game, you know.
Now you got drafted by Vancouver, decided to play in the National Hockey League like you said you were going to. Your dream was fulfilled. Tell me about that first season in Vancouver. You spent some time, I think it was the Dallas Blackhawks. Did you have?
Well, first I went to Tulsa, but I tell this story regularly to some of my friends, and it was the first year I'm drafted, so I went on the first road trip with the team, and the first game we played was in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh had a pretty good team in that era. They had Pierre LaRouche, which was
really play
3-time 50-goal scorer in the NHL with 3 different teams. He was young, and so they had Pittsburgh was still a pretty good team back in that era. So I'm just a 19-year-old kid, so I'm sitting on the bench, and we probably had 7 defensemen dressed, and I was the kid working the door a little bit, and then I got a shift, and he said, "Get out there, kid." And so I went out there, and boom, 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 it happened so fast, a goal, right? So Make a long story short, I had 3 shifts that night, and we ended up losing 9-5, and I was on for 3 goals. So
you know when to get off.
So wait, so this goes on. So anyways, we stay that night in Pittsburgh. It's a Thursday, and so Pittsburgh go to Montreal to play. And at that era, in '76, Montreal had only lost 8 games.
Well, that's right.
That was the season they only lost 8 games, and they're in the midst of their
Scotty Bowman era.
Yeah, their 4-cup run. So they were really. So anyways, we're in the airport in Pittsburgh. And we're heading up to Montreal, and Eddie Johnston's a coach, and he runs into our GM on the way back, and they lose 9-1 or 9-0 in Montreal. So they say to each other, "I guess we might as well not even go.
Yeah.
We might as well send the 2 points." That was the first time I ever heard anybody say we might as well not go, send the 2 points.
Yeah, bail the 2 points.
Anyways, we got to Montreal, and that was my team growing up. So I was amazed to be in the Forum and.
Tell everybody what it's like, because maybe you can explain it better. You walk in, you see the huge murals of Morenz and Richard, and you know, and
the banners.
The banners, and you almost sit there and think you're playing against those guys, and it's not those guys, but
the color and the brightness of the rink that you weren't used to coming out of a junior rink and seeing a rink with 17 or 18,000 seats, whatever it was, coming out of junior.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh was kind of dull, and I'd been in some NHL rinks like in Toronto and Buffalo, but to be in there all of a sudden when you're in your equipment and practicing that morning,
I know everything smells different.
It's quite I don't know, it's overwhelming a little bit. It overtakes you, and then to go out there in the warm up and to watch these guys. And I looked at Serge Savard, and he was so big, he looked like a tree. And I said to myself, you know, I weighed probably about 175 pounds then, and I said, man, if this guy hits me, he would kill me. I said, he didn't look that big on TV when I was watching.
Everybody's big,
and they were monsters. Savard, Robinson, Lapointe, you know, and I looked at those guys, and they were so big standing across the line. Anyways, the game came down and we were losing 3-0. I'd sat the bench the whole game. If you remember in Montreal, how close the bench was to the boards, right? You sat there like that.
That little exit.
Yeah, so I sat there like a little kid all night with my stick, and I watched the game, and I was watching these guys ripping across. It's probably had 50 or 60 shots, and it was 3-0. So with about 4 minutes left in the game, Phil Maloney was the coach, and he tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "Kid, get out there and have some fun." So across the ice I go, ripping, boom. Cross ice pass, Lafleur goes by me about 100 miles an hour, hits the goalie right in the toe. So I'm huffing and puffing, my leg seize up, I get back to the bench, I got my head down, I didn't want to go back out there, and I got the tap again, and Lafleur was still out there, and he went by me the same way, and this time he hit the post. So I come back to the bench, and he wasn't going to tap me again, and I told all my friends about it, and I said, "What was it like?" I said, "What was it like?" I said, "Look at me." I said, I was over on the ice, and somebody put my hat and put my shirt over my head, and they said, "Go play." But after that, we went to Chicago, and I worked the door. That was the last of the 3-game road trip. And we went back to Vancouver, and they sent me down to Tulsa, and I couldn't wait to leave after that because I wasn't ready for the NHL as a 19-year-old, and you know, and he needed some time really to play the game and to develop and to grow into it.
Your strongest suit to me was your great skating ability. I always thought you were one of the most natural skaters that I ever saw. And you could have been a forward or defense in anything you wanted to play. Well, matter of fact, sometimes I was confused if you were.
Well, I'll tell you, I played 2 years in Detroit as a left winger.
That's what I thought you were.
After I'd left all those years, I started with Van and then Toronto, and of course I played in the All-Star game. And,
I was going to say in 86?
No, 82. I played in the 82 All-Star
How'd that feel?
That was a pretty good experience. I mean, thanks to the help of Boria, who didn't go, but you know, that season I scored 50 points.
You were unbelievable.
And then I left and I went to Europe for a year. And when I came back, I started in Detroit as a D, and then I ended up playing 2 years as a left winger. So
that was not a good Detroit team.
No, but we made the playoffs. It was Stevie Y's first year.
He's always going to be as great as he was when he.
Well, not when he first started, but when you finished the year and he had 39 goals as an 18-year-old, you certainly seen there was something. And then the next year he went to the Team Canada, and he came back and he was even better.
Now, my friend, you know what? I want to tell you this. You were a trendsetter for a lot of guys because you were one of the first guys that I ever heard of that said, "You know what? I can play in the NHL, but I'm going to go and make some money over in Europe." And you went over to Italy, I believe, first.
Yeah, I went in after the '82 season actually, and over a little contract trouble, and then I joined the Italians at the end of that season in Toronto. We didn't make the playoffs, and I played in the World Championships for Italy.
Yeah.
And at that time, there was only 8 teams playing in the World Championships, and we ended up beating the U.S. and we tied Canada with a team of Gretz and Bobby Clark.
Who was your goalie? Jimmy Corsi?
Our goalie was Jimmy Corsi. He
played out of his head that night.
Yeah, but we Dave Chambers was our coach, and I remember before the game, I was playing that year in Toronto with Ricky Vive, and so on the
Squid, yeah.
And so on the warm-up, we're there at center ice, and in Italy, you couldn't even see Italia written across it. The sweaters were so old and faded, they must have used them for a couple of years. And so he walks up to me, and he skates up to me on the blue, and he says to me, he goes, "Hey, Bird," he goes, "Nice unis." And this is a true story. I said, "Ricky," I said, "the unis don't make the team."
Yeah.
And anyways, we scored 2 goals, I think, right at the buzzer. One at the end of the first period, one at the end of the second period to tie the game up. And so we went on, and like I said, we tied Canada, beat the U.S., and we ended up staying in the A pool. And then I found that I couldn't play in the Olympics in '84 for the Italians, and that's when I ended up coming back. I had an Italian passport, but they wouldn't let pros play in the Olympics at the time.
Right.
So that was in '84 in Sarajevo. So then I ended up coming back, and I played those 2 years.
So I think I played against you. I went over the exact same.
I played with you when you were in.
I was in Salem City. You were in
Salem City. You were.
Yeah, and we beat you the one night.
Yeah, yeah.
And our coach Frank Carvelli said, "Because you guys never lost at home, I guess."
Yeah.
I think your coach was Teddy Sater.
No, you played the other Milan team. At that time, we had Lou Vairo. Who works in the U.S. Hockey.
Yeah, I know. I've talked to Lou. Gave me a call when I sat Patrick O'Sullivan on and gave me shit.
Okay, in my last year in Milan, there was 2 Milan teams,
yeah,
and Teddy Sater coached the other team. So.
Now, you enjoyed that lifestyle?
Yeah, I mean, after
you enjoyed the paychecks for sure.
Well, absolutely, and after a while, when you find out that you're practicing at 7 o'clock at night, which wasn't bad, and it wasn't quite the hustle and bustle.
Right.
And I think at a certain point in my life there, I was like, 28 or 29, I played in the National Hockey League. So I guess deep down inside, I could look at the mirror myself and say, I played in the NHL, but now
you want to make some money.
You want to keep making money, exactly. As a hockey player, that's the bottom line. And I think I would only probably had a few more years left to play in the National Hockey League, so I figured I'd go on to Europe and play a little longer.
And you became a great coach over there, well-respected coach. And did you have trouble, Bobby, getting the guys to think like you do as a national hockey player, as a pro guy, the professionalism? Did you have any trouble with that?
Well, the good thing was when I first started coaching was I coached the guys that I just finished playing with.
Which is tough too.
It wasn't a little way, but after what we went through and gone to a couple finals, I had a lot of respect from the players.
Right.
So it made it easy that I had those couple of years with them. I didn't really have to separate myself like you would over here as much since we were hanging together a little bit, and so I did separate myself, but they were still my buddies, and they were close to my age still. It wasn't like there was a
big gap.
It wasn't like there was a gap of me going back to Germany now and coaching kids that were in their 20s and 30s. At that time, I was only 37 years old when I retired, so some of my players were in their 30s and they were friends of mine, so that helped a little bit.
You and I were talking prior to the show about the young kid that did the spinorama, and I'd just be interested, the kid for the Oilers that did the spinorama, what's his name, guys, do you remember? Omar, okay, did the spinorama and the penalty shot, and I said that the kids today, they're not as nervous about playing the National Hockey. We heard your experience about playing against Montreal, and you had that respect factor. Absolutely. What's the big difference, Bobby, between today's player and the player that played when you and I played? And I'm not saying, when I used to hear Stan Mikita say, "Oh, you guys, you weren't as good as..." The kids I think are better hockey players. They're stronger, physically stronger, they're in better shape than we ever were. But what's the attitude, what's the difference, do you think, between the players now and back then?
Like we said, I guess every era, to me, when we talk with people, to me it's like comparing apples and oranges.
Right.
Like things change and everything evolve. But like we talked about earlier, for me, I think the past era, or our era, was more respect of the game and loved to play the game, and we played it for the game. And I think the way things evolved, I think the money's got involved, and it's changed, I think, the respect of player for player and maybe players for the game.
Do you think you'll ever see, they talk about concussion syndrome and the guys getting knocked out, and they say, well, we're gonna breed a helmet that's gonna stop that. I don't think you're ever gonna stop concussions that you see now. The guys are too big. I never took that class in physics, mass times speed equals velocity, or whatever it was. I missed that class, but the guys are so much bigger now and so much stronger. I just think you're gonna see guys get knocked out even more.
Yeah, see, I don't think that the helmet, I mean, it can protect you in some instance, but a lot of the concussions that we've seen are elbows and hits to the face, to the jaw, where we're talking about a guy, he hit a guy, he went at his head, it's a headshot, where the guy's down playing for the puck. I mean, any 6-foot man playing against another 6-foot man at the same size, when the guy has his head down looking for a puck,
is the respect still there?
He's vulnerable. I don't think so. I don't believe. This is one thing, and I'm sure you can guarantee this. I don't remember anybody being hit from behind. in the 70s or 80s. I don't remember one player, because we played without helmets.
That's right.
I mean, I started playing without a helmet in the NHL. And I don't remember anybody going in the corner and fishing for a puck and would have to worry that somebody would come and drill their head into the boards. And I think somehow that's really a shame to the game that this has come to that point.
And you're going to see some guy going out 10 toes up. Somebody's going to get killed. And you know what? Part of it is the coaches, and I'm a big one that started it myself. You want that first forechecker in on the defenseman, like a heat-seeking missile. You want to get in there hard.
Absolutely.
And now they stopped the hold-up. You can't hold the guy up, which
has caused a bit of a problem.
That's right, because the guy's coming in at 35 miles an hour on a guy, the defenseman. How'd you like to turn your back and go back and get the puck now?
Yeah, I just don't like to see how guys are... there's all different hits from different angles. Guys come from the side, from behind. They blindside guys. I don't know if the players, like you talked about, probably better athletes. I don't know if they were aware of what's going on out there. I don't think anybody really grew up to realize that the guys are going to be coming charging at you.
That's right.
I know we didn't have to worry. I mean, we got some hard hits. I mean, there were some tough guys in our era, and there was a lot of hitting. I don't think the hitting's changed, but it's the type of hitting.
Did you play lacrosse growing up?
No, I didn't play any lacrosse.
Now, Steve Larmer and I chit-chat all the time. He's a good friend of mine. He says a lot of the responsibility of the guys who are getting hurt is the guys that are taking the hit. Like you're coming across the blue line or the red line. When we played, you're sitting there saying, that defenseman's coming, and if I don't see it, I might want to bail out on that puck.
Yeah.
But what happened is kids are playing hockey now. They're playing with the bird cages on, and they don't hit from a young age. They start learning when they're 14, so they don't learn. It's like putting your hand on an element. You get knocked out once or knocked down at the red line once by a defenseman, you're not going to try it again.
Yeah, it's really a rock and a hard spot between the mask and the equipment and growing up and what the protection is. And like I said, going back 30 years ago, or even a little bit less, where players were playing without helmets,
right,
there was definitely more of a respect. And if you grew up like that, you're kind of trained to be like that. And I think if you're very vicious as a bantam or a midget or a junior player, and you're playing with that much, I don't know. Sometimes it seem like players have hatred towards each other, where I don't think there was that. I really don't think there was that. And to hear somebody said, I didn't want to hurt him, or I feel bad that he's hurt.
Yeah.
And if you did, why would you have that vicious attack on a guy in such a way that to hurt him or hit him from behind?
Yeah.
So
I got to ask you a couple questions before we go. Best player that you ever played against?
That's a really it's got to be Gretz. I mean, it's got to be Gretz. But before Gretz came along, for me, Guy Lafleur was the best player. I mean, he was so fast, and as the defenseman coming down on him, he just had the speed and the power to blow by you with the speed and with the shot, where Gretz just kind of out-tricked you, outsmarted you.
He's a chess master.
Yeah, he was probably, I mean, obviously you've seen him too, and we've seen the numbers that he put up. And but for me, just before Gretz came along, for me, a straight speed and shooting was Guy Lafleur.
Best goalie you ever saw?
Best goalie, that's there was some. Probably I have to go with Kenny Dryden. Obviously, in our era, he was backing up that team that was winning cup after cup, and he was probably one of the first big men to play in the nets and cover a lot of net. And as you can see today, it's evolved to goalies are
can't see any spots.
6'5" or 6'4" guys, and he was a big man like that.
Describe Bob Mano in a sentence as a player.
In which era? I probably went through two different eras. I was young and immature when I was probably in the National Hockey League, and I have a little story I always tell guys. I said, I wish I could put my 35-year-old head on my 25-year-old legs.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, because I think that, then I could have been an all-star all the time. But you learn the game as you go along, and like I said, I was probably a little bit immature. Didn't have the guidance probably that you could have had in today's game. But as I got a little bit older, I said, geez, I wish I could skate as fast as my brain would think. And they didn't kind of coordinate. I didn't think as quick as fast as I was when I was young.
Right.
And so that's probably my...
that's one of the best answers I've ever heard from a guy about describing himself as a player.
Yeah, that's how I wish
I want to tell you, folks, a number of years ago I was going to get the job here in coaching the Niagara junior team, and we were going to buy the team down here. And this man was going to be my guy who's going to run the defenseman, because I know the type of guy he is. And Bobby, I want to thank you for coming in, my friend. And great stories.
Nice.
Great stories, and you're a beautiful man, and everybody loves you in the Falls and all the world around. Thanks, buddy. Thank you. This has been Ludsy's Lounge. Check for more. We had Marcel Dion, we had Bobby Mano. Lots with Derek Sanders will be on next week. God bless you.